Hi, I'm Lauren Olson with World Centric, and we're just waiting to get started on our live video interview with Krista Sison, the founder of Multitude Studio. So again, thanks for coming. We're going to be talking with Multitude Studio today. And hi, I'm Lauren Olson. I'm the Zero Waste Manager at World Centric, and we'll be talking with Multitude Studio about her work as part of our Earth Week Instagram Live series.
Hi,
Hi.
how are you?
How are you?
I'm
I'm
doing
good.
good.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Just, working from home, hanging in there.
Yeah, same.
Thanks for bringing me on today. I'm excited that I get to talk to you guys because I wasn't able to make the eco-social because I was back in Ohio, just dealing with a family emergency, but I'm glad we get to talk now.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I wasn't able to make it down to LA either, so yeah. But yeah, and maybe if you want to introduce yourself, Krista, and give us a little briefer on Multitude Studio.
For sure. So my name's Krista Sison. Multitude Studio, I guess I'd say at its best is a community organization that I run, and we focus on educating people about sustainability through different mediums, through fashion, art, events, and just like online initiatives. We do a lot of our teaching and sharing on Instagram mostly. Like a few different things that we kind of do consistently are like Teach Me Tuesdays. We do biannual clothing swaps. We have a sustainable dining series, and right now we're in the middle of what we're calling the Plastic Project. So kind of like a lot of different initiatives here and there. It's kind of honestly just a passion project for me. I work
Mhm.
full time still doing something totally different, but yeah, it kind of started, I started it like 3 years ago, I want to say.
Mhm.
And initially had started it because I was working in fashion and designing clothing,
Mhm.
and had gone on a couple trips overseas and just wasn't really happy about what I saw. Um, and so I kind of just started shifting my path from there on. Started buying just like secondhand clothing only, started eliminating plastic out of my life, and kind of was just sharing all this information that I was learning as I was going because I felt like nobody really knew, um,
Yeah.
or at
Were you
least was paying
working
attention.
in fast fashion at the time?
Yeah,
That
I
yeah.
was.
Okay. Yeah.
I I used to be like a really big buyer of like Zara and H&M and Forever 21 and all that kind of stuff, and I just don't do that anymore.
Hmm.
It took me a long time to kind of train myself out of that and be disciplined out of it. But yeah, I was working in fast fashion for, I want to say like maybe 4 years. I was like 4 years in at the time. And I kind of like had this ethical struggle because I was like, I've spent all my money on going to school for this. Like, I've spent
Right.
all my energy doing this, and
Hmm.
like, just come to find out that it wasn't really what I wanted to do with the rest of my life.
Hmm.
I still work for fashion companies now, but more on the graphics end.
Hmm.
And I'd love to transition into a more sustainable career path, but I've just kind of been learning the ins and outs of these kinds of businesses and kind of using that experience to educate more. How we're marketed to these days, and like just all the kind of like, I feel kind of like a secret insider to like
Hmm. Yeah,
business,
the
like the fashion.
affluenza sort of. Yeah.
Yeah, like all these fashion secrets and all this stuff. And
Hmm.
so I feel like because I'm still in those worlds, like I can process that and see how like we can counteract it almost.
Yeah, so what are some ways you think that we can counteract these, these multinational corporations which have put, clothing at rock bottom prices, at the expense of the environment and the expense of people? Um, what are some ways that you think, big and small, that we can combat that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of things that we can do, but I think just some small things. I mean, I feel like a lot of people, like a lot of questions that I get are like, well, how do I be sustainable but on like a budget, right? And I
Hmm.
think there are two really easy answers to that. One is to not shop, which most people don't like that answer, but it's the
Yeah.
truth, right?
Hmm.
Two is that you don't buy anything new. So any
Hmm.
like at this point in time, there's so much clothing that if we stopped producing clothing right now, like we would have no shortage for so long.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
there are no people in this entire world that should be like without clothing because there's enough. Like China, I think in like 2012, China was producing 150 billion garments a year. Like there was only like 8 billion people in the world. Like we just don't
Yeah.
need that much clothing. So, yeah, don't shop or shop secondhand all the time. Right now, as of right now, like all I have in or buy is like vintage or secondhand, thrifted, even consignment stores, you know? So I think
Hmm.
those are like the better routes to go for right now. Um, and then I think also just really educating ourselves in terms of like what brands are actually selling us because a lot you can make a lot of things look really good these days, but they're really not good quality.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, design and branding I feel like is really at our fingertips um, this day and age, and so we really have to do the research. And a big indicator for if a company is sustainable or not is how much they talk about it.
Mm.
You know, you can go in there about me or most places have like a sustainability tab or like a corporate responsibility page, and that'll tell you like what you need to know. I mean, I remember going on to like H&M's website like 2 years ago, and it literally said on their website, "We're working to pay our workers a living wage by 2018." And it's like,
Mm.
well, you've actually been operating for more than 10 years and you still can't pay people a living wage. Like
Right.
that's not good enough, you know?
Hmm.
And so people will tell you, and
Yeah,
if people
H&M's received a lot of criticism because, they produce all of these low cost garments, right, at huge cost to the environment, but yet they have a very large sustainability campaign. And so it gets to be confusing for the consumer because really the whole business model of fast fashion is antithesis to
yeah,
what they're preaching, and yet they're not willing to change the core business
for
into
sure.
something, that's.
I think
But what
that's
are
like
some businesses that are like doing well? Like, I look at like Patagonia and Eileen Fisher.
mhm. Yeah, I mean, I think Patagonia and Eileen Fisher are great companies. I think I'd say that realistically, like sustainability is about supporting like small business, small batch
Hmm.
designers, local designers, just like any like really big corporations, even if they are working towards sustainability, like they know that they still have an impact on the earth, right? Like
Yeah.
Patagonia talks
Well, we
about it
all
all the
do.
time. And there's no way that we can be 100% sustainable. And so I think like at the core of it, like with multitudes, I do a lot of like surface level education, like with Teach Me Tuesdays, but then if we want to go deeper and deeper, the heart of it is like that we have a consumption problem, right?
Hmm.
So that's why I always say like the best option is to stop shopping.
Hmm.
Like right now, I'm like in the middle of a challenge, a personal challenge where I'm not buying anything for the entire year and seeing how that affects me. And so far, it really hasn't made a difference to me at all. But I've had to
Yeah.
do that discipline and do that work over the course of like 2 years, you know? But there's a lot of like great other sustainable brands. I love this brand called Hack with Design. And like people line up for that stuff and they always have a waiting list because like it like fits multiple different people. They like take their time with the pattern making and the fabrics and like
Hmm.
everything. They know where everything comes from. Elizabeth Suzanne is like another great one that I love. But I mean, to be honest, I still mostly buy from vintage places. Thrift
Hmm.
stores are great. Yeah, but I think also it just kind of depends because, like, I find that my siblings or like my brother, he doesn't know that he has like a thrifty style, he calls it. But I always tell him like consignment stores are great too. They have like a lot more modern clothing, but still
Hmm.
secondhand.
Yeah, and they're nice too because you can guarantee they don't have like rips or stains and stuff like that. So it's a little bit easier the sorting process, I find, than
Yeah, like
going to
some
a
people
thrift
don't
store.
like to dig through like all the
Yeah,
stuff at the thrift
yeah,
store. For me, that's
yeah.
kind of like the fun stuff, but
Right, right,
there's something for everyone, I feel like
right.
within the realm of secondhand, even with like people coming up on like Depop or Poshmark, like all great resources. Although I do still think we need to reduce shopping.
Yeah. Yeah, something that I always think of when I like head into a store and I feel myself going down like a slippery slope. I always ask myself if I'm like, lonely, hungry, the typical type questions and just like really make sure that I'm like consuming for the right reasons and not just like consuming to fill some sort of, psychological need or something like that because that's, really what these stores and this fashion is geared towards is to try to hook you psychologically into some sort of consumption.
Yeah, I think like the reality of like any kind of selling environment is that like their bottom line is to like make money, right? And so they do, in order to keep their business running, they are going to promote and they are going to like tell you all these things, but there's somewhere along the line where like marketing like was just like something to try and like give you information about a product you're buying, and now it's turned into like a lot of lying, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
greenwashing. And so I mean, there's no like requirements or laws that say like you have to meet this and this requirement to call yourself sustainable, right? I think there's also like conversation in the sustainable atmosphere that the language is starting to shift to corporate responsibility or just
Mm-hmm.
responsibility in general, or
Yeah.
like climate change is changing from climate change to climate emergency because we do need to like stress how important it is instead of just calling it change.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you want to talk a little more about Multitude Studio? I know we touched on it earlier, but like some events you've had, like the closing swap and
Yeah,
other things that you do, or sort of outreach about these ideas.
sure. So I guess one of the big things, or I guess one of the big things for multitudes that's become really prominent for us is like, how do we talk to like artists or like how do we talk to the millennial generation about being concerned for the earth, right? And I think that's really important because creatives and like artists like create a lot of waste, right? You know,
Yeah.
we've got productions, we've got TV, we've got like fashion shows, like all of these things, and even like the food waste that happens on productions and all of the plastic that comes onto productions, like those are the
Mm-hmm.
things that we need to be addressing and talking about. And so we host all different types of events and initiatives. Biannually, we have clothing swaps, which are free and open to the public. And it's basically just like bring 15 items, and if you want, you can take 15, but we encourage you, like, if you don't want to, you don't have to. And then I
Mm-hmm.
kind of sort through whatever's left over, and we'll take it to like the women's center in downtown, or we'll take it to like a home for teens, or we kind of sort appropriately for where it should
Mm-hmm.
go instead of just dropping it off at Goodwill. And like, don't get me wrong, like Goodwill is great and they do a lot of important work, but they also are kind of treated like the world's trash can nowadays. Like even
Definitely.
if your stuff isn't good, like people still take it there,
Hmm.
and they spend millions and millions of dollars trying to get rid of that stuff.
Hmm.
So I always kind of like try and spread the word that like if there's clothes that you shouldn't be donating and they just aren't in good condition, you should take them to like a recycling bin. I don't really know of all the recycling bins across the United States, but here in LA, like I have one that I have specifically pinned on my phone and I share it out with people, or I share the company and have them like kind of do the research in their area.
Hmm.
I think additionally, like we also do
What
things.
company is it that you recommend in terms of like clothing recycling, like actually taking the fibers and making it into something, it's like not reuse, it's actual recycling.
Yeah, I put my clothes. There's a bin in South Pasadena. It's by a company called Use Again. So
Oh,
USAGAIN. And you
mm,
basically just have to put your clothing in a bag so that nothing can like fall out.
yeah.
And then you can put them in there, and then it'll ship to Texas, and that's where they start sorting and processing everything. And
Okay.
usually it gets turned into something like insulation.
Yeah.
And if anybody ever wants that pin, if you're local to Los Angeles, you can just DM me and I'll send it to you.
Hmm. You still there? Oh, looks like your connection. There we go.
That
I
was
think we got
my
you.
that was my Instagram limit for the day. But yeah, I mean, alternatively, like outside of fashion, we also we also do events like our sustainable dining series, and
Mm,
this kind of came out about because my friends actually had approached me and said, like we really understand like what you're doing in terms of sustainability, but we want to understand how we can make a difference in this. And
yeah.
they said, we really love having barbecues at our house and inviting people over. Is this
Hmm.
sustainable or can it be more sustainable? And I said, everything can always be more sustainable. And so we kind of like started churning this idea, and we basically like started looking for sponsors who really cared about like where their ingredients were coming from, whether they were like local or sustainably sourced or ethically raised. We like looked into like sustainable beer companies. We looked in, obviously we paired with World Centric, and they
Great.
provided us with like excuse me, they provided us with like the plates and cups and cutlery and napkins and all that stuff. And the first time we did it, we had like a composting company that was willing to take it for us. And then the second time, they had like kind of closed their business to pursue something else. So we were like, what are we going to do with this now? Because we don't have access to an industrial composter. And we
Hmm.
actually also had partnered with Sweet Green at the time, who had donated us salads for a barbecue. And they actually ended up welcoming the like to take all of our compostable and biodegradable stuff to their own industrial composting place. So we
Oh,
just
that's
brought
awesome.
all of our stuff after we had the barbecue and passed it along to them, and they happily took care of it, which was amazing. But we kind of like started this as a conversation of like sustainability is like daily action, and it's not
Hmm.
just like this faraway idea. Like everything we do can have intention to it. We probably fed like 60 people that day and only created like a small gift bag of waste. Everything was composted or recycled.
That's awesome.
And if you think about like, all of the things that happen throughout even LA, like all the events that are happening,
Right.
and if all these could switch to be more sustainable, or eco-friendly, like we wouldn't be
Mm.
using plastic water bottles, we wouldn't be using like plastic knives and forks and spoons and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And
it's overwhelming when you think about the amount of catering that must happen in LA
mm-hmm.
alone, which is like the size of a small country, and just the,
Yeah, and
all of that.
I think like for creatives, it's like for example, if you're like a producer, or if you're like on big shoots all the time, it's like just voicing it to the people who have the power to make those changes is really important. Like I've started going on shoots and having like my call sheet say like, please bring your own water bottle. Like this is a plastic free shoot. This is a plastic free environment. Like that makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And realistically, like whoever's planning the budgets for those should be to like planning budget for having those resources taken care of. There's also like companies that you can hire onto for shoots that'll bring like portable water dispensing stations and stuff like that. Just like a lot more
Mm-hmm.
um, resources so that you don't have to create waste. Um, yeah, so I think like a lot of a lot of what we do is just kind of like shining a light on all these different resources that we have at our fingertips to live life more intentionally and like waste free.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
So
yeah.
you have an actual physical space then where you hold these clothing swaps? Do you have like that rented out year round, or do you just like rent them as needed for the event? Or
Actually, I don't have a space. I mean, the name Multitude Studio is actually just because it originally didn't start as like a community organization. It started as
mm-hmm.
like a means for me to like sell these home goods that I was making out of materials that were destined to be in landfill, and I kind of just took them all to my house and then started making like upcycling them into new products. And I think I was doing that for like a year, and then I did it with clothing for like a year, and eventually I realized that that wasn't the important part about it for me. I realized that like the education, like for me, education is what I'm trying to like sell, but like
Mm-hmm.
clothing or art is the vehicle in which I get it into people's hands. Like that's like what people want to look at. That's like what people want to see. But like, it's like, here's this picture of clothing, but here's all the information that goes along with it. So
Yeah.
I don't have a space. Like I just work out of my apartment, and it's basically just me. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
the only one who's in the day to day of Multitudes, but then I have a bunch of other friends that are usually willing to help and like volunteer if I'm hosting an event.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, like we keep it like really community oriented, and I just like ask friends like if they have a space, like if they're willing to like let me use it for like a few hours, and then we never post their address like online. You have to RSVP if you want to like know where the place is. But yeah, the clothing swaps are free and open to the public. Our sustainable dining series is a little bit more specific because I mean, we pay for it out of our own pockets, like me and my friends, and then we get sponsors where we can, but
Mm-hmm.
we also only have such a limited amount of space and a limited amount of food. So kind of like having anything over like 70 people is a lot for us. Um, but yeah, we kind of like I'd love for multitudes to grow into something that could be like kind of like growing like a tree, right? Like you branch out and like maybe somebody's doing something through multitudes, but in their own city, like whether that
Mm-hmm.
be in Ohio or in San Francisco or in Chicago. But for now, this is kind of like just a really grassroots thing. And we always look for different initiatives and ways to grow. One thing that we're kind of in the middle of right now is something called the Plastic Project.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. I saw that on your
Yeah,
website. Yeah.
so um, I mean, the Plastic Project is also an idea that was born from one of my friends. And actually, two of my friends, they came to me and said, hey, we have this idea and we think it could be really great, but we think that you have the platform for it. And so they said, like, we should create a calendar and, like, you just focus on one thing to eliminate that's plastic every month from your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next month you start on something else and you don't like add the previous thing back in, you just keep adding, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of like went back and forth and we created a calendar, which can be found like on our website, or if you sign up for it, like you'll get monthly emails just as a reminder. But every month you'll have like a plastic elimination of the month. So we started in January with toothbrush and toothpaste.
Mm.
And then we kind of like educated around resources for plastic-free toothbrushes and toothpaste. We've done bar soap, we've done shampoo and conditioner.
Mm-hmm.
This month, we're we just so happened to land on toilet paper this month, which is a little bit difficult since a lot of places are sold out of it. But we're still kind of just every month with each plastic elimination, we're talking to people about why it's harmful to keep buying the plastic version of it.
Mm-hmm.
And we talk about like the benefits to buying the plastic free versions. We also kind of have reached out to a ton of different partners within those specific eliminations that we've planned to have giveaways. And this is kind of something that I wanted to do because one of the reasons I feel like people don't try these new things or these plastic-free options or these sustainable, eco-friendly things is because they want to talk about cost. And it can be costly if you like keep trying and not liking something. Like,
Right.
I mean, I've tried a ton of different conditioner bars and I haven't really landed on one until like 2 weeks ago, you know?
And everybody's hair is different too, like I can recommend, what I like. I just like castor oil, for example,
Yeah,
like once a week, but like I have different hair
for
than most
sure.
people, so it's like, yeah.
Yeah.
So it can be hard, yeah. Like I found a conditioner bar was like too weighty for my hair and
Yeah. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to do the try and partner with brands to do the giveaways is so that people can try things for free, right?
hmm
I mean, sometimes like with the last one we just did, the last giveaway we just did, we kind of did like a kit. And some of the products I just bought myself just to like encourage people to try them, you know?
yeah.
But yeah, we've got a lot more partners like for the rest of the year. There's like a month where we talk about laundry, how to do your laundry more sustainably and without plastic
hmm
and all that kind of stuff. We talk about obviously the plastic straw, we talk about the cups, all of it.
hmm
And I mean, we have like I want to say like signed up, like officially like signed up. It's not like a huge number. We probably have like 50, 40 or 50 people, but for me that's actually a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like something that I talk about all the time is that the changes for the environment they actually come about through intimate conversations and not like
hmm
these big bold moves that like a lot of people think. I feel like it's a lot about relatability these days, and so if people feel like they can relate to me or like relate to somebody who's like helping us out with like a clothing swap, and then they see that it's easier for them to live in a more responsible way, they kind of see now like that it's possible for them.
Definitely. Well, cool. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Um, I don't think so. I mean, I will say, I will say this one last thing. And I guess,
Do it.
I'm excited that it's Earth Week. Um, I love celebrating the earth and it's all I talk about. But I definitely want to like encourage people this Earth Day to like try and not buy anything. Um,
Yeah.
Instead of like looking at all these Earth Day sales, which is going to tell
hmm
you, like all these companies are going to tell you that they care about the environment, and maybe some of them do, and I think that is that is true, and you'll see it. You'll know which companies really do care, but most of these people are using and manipulating the earth to generate sales, and so if you can
hmm
avoid that, you definitely should. That's the best way to take care of the earth and celebrate the earth on Earth Day.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. Kind of reducing your consumption is something that we could all work on. But I will say there are corporations that they come into this space like not trying to turn their cruise ship, so to speak, of corporation into sustainability, but like these other companies like World Centric, where it was built to be sustainable. So
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
And
but
like,
it is very difficult as a consumer to try to like piece out that information and try to like figure that all out because there's so
mhm.
much to take in, and you only have so much time, and you can like definitely overeducate yourself, and then you're like, okay, I don't this is taxing. I
Yeah,
don't want to do this
for
anymore.
sure. I think, yeah, that's so true. I think it's hard to know like what kinds of questions to ask because there's so much information that we just don't know. And so I feel like I encourage people to like if they are wondering something, like they should just send a message to that company and ask.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
I always encourage that because if they don't if they don't give you the answer you're looking for, then that's your answer, right? Um,
Yeah.
or if they don't respond, then like maybe just like back off of it until they do respond, until you get your answer.
Hmm.
And I think also like this path towards like living more sustainably, like you have to have a lot of patience and grace for yourself in it. I'm not
Hmm.
I'm not perfect, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um, I like I for like I forget all the time, or like things happen in life that like kind of throw me off of my course, but you always get back onto the path.
Hmm. Yeah. I think we. Oh, you're good. I think it's all
No,
about being kind to yourself too. If you want, you're trying your best, and just like realizing that like you're gonna make mistakes or whatever, but you're trying, and like that's the most important thing.
yeah, I
And
think we're
that's like
all
the best
kind
you can
of
do is the best you can do, right? So,
yeah, I think we're all trying to kind of head like in the right direction. But it takes a lot of like self-reflection, and sometimes people don't like that. And sometimes people are like, if you want to get on the path towards living sustainably, you have to be willing to like address like those concerns that you have.
hmm,
Yeah. Yeah.
and do without, and be like, all right, I guess I'm just not getting that thing. And, surprise, surprise, like a week later or a day later or whatever, you realize you don't really need it anyway. So,
Yeah.
because
I
like,
think like actually when when I was kind of trying to train myself to not want to shop anymore, I feel like this is
mm,
actually like a really good practical step, but I would still like do my window shopping online and all that stuff, and I would like put all these different things in my cart and I just would not buy it.
mm,
And I would let it
mm,
sit in there, and I would close the window, and like I would come back a week later, and by that time already I'd like not want any of like half of the things, and then I'd come back a week later and then I wouldn't want like two more things, and then come back a week later and I'm like, I don't care about any of this. And so
mm,
if you're not gonna think about it like a month down the line, it really doesn't matter. I feel like that was like a really good practice for me, in terms of like switching my mindset on shopping.
yeah, totally. Well, I did want to mention that World Centric, we have more Instagram lives coming up. And so we have one at 2 p.m. today with the Director of Impact, Janae Lloyd. We'll talk with Kim Kupanaz about B Lab, about doing business as a force for good. I'm sure you're familiar with B Corps,
Yeah.
and that's what World Centric is. And it's a great way to differentiate as a consumer as well as a business to figure out like what businesses are at their core sustainable, and really looking out for not only their workers but for the environment.
That's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much too. Thanks for having me.
All right.
All right.
Well, enjoy your quarantine, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.